Welcome in. There's the old boy, Joe Pisapia of Fantasy Pros, and the man behind the Fantasy Black Book series just released the baseball version. Oh, yeah, right behind you. Man, I always love the titles, but you somehow like the cover, but you somehow find a way to top it every single year. How do you do that?
Well, you hire the right people, Meanie. I have very little artistic ability in that end. My youngest daughter,
Lies.
incredible at drawing. My father, an architect. So I can only assume that the pen and the paper and all of that visual end of creativity just skipped a generation. I'm just useless there. But what are you gonna do? That's why you hire good people, Chris Meanie. That's why you do
Yeah, I don't believe you. You're very artistic. I don't believe you for one second
not
there,
not in
dude.
the not in the pen and paper visual medium. In more of the expressive medium, yes, that might be true. But in terms of like the visual arts, I'm not your guy, probably. Although I'm okay at Pictionary. I'm all right there. I can
Oh,
get by with the
okay.
stick
All
figures. We'll
right.
figure it
Big
out. Yeah.
Pictionary player. I could see that about you. I want to talk football with you, but I have to talk baseball. Why don't you take the time to talk about we do this every year, those that know you and know me, but I feel like they still get some new viewers and listeners that, stumble across my show. And you've done
Mhm.
such a great job over the years, man, of just identifying value. And this book is so informative. And I mean, all the entire series, right? The baseball and the football. And I joked off the top, you and I did hockey one year, and we may have to
Yeah.
revisit that at some point
I
in
would
the
love
future.
to. It's
Yeah,
so hard. It's like not enough hours in the day, it feels like.
there
That's the
isn't.
problem.
There really
Yeah,
isn't. But talk to me about the Black Book, what it has to offer, where you can get it, all the good stuff that
absolutely.
it has to
Well,
offer, Joe.
look, it's an incredible crew of people, and that's where it always starts. Again, you're a good manager when you hire the right people. Like the people who run FTN, they hire good people like Chris Meaney. It makes life a lot easier on them, and that's what I try to do also. But relative position value, trying to understand where the value is on the board, players compare to their peers, just how much more valuable they are. I always say rankings are good, tiers are better. Quantified rankings. That's what the difference is. That's how you find value when you're approaching not just your snake drafts, but also all those salary cap formats too. Best ball
Mhm.
drafts, all those things too. We're most comprehensive dynasty guide you're going to find out there too. 100 prospect profiles from Eric Cross, who's the best in the business there. The Welsh, our boy Chris Welsh, doing all of the draft strategies this year. Paul Sporer writes up all the pitchers. So this is like an all-star grouping here of people every single year we get. We got a great team, and it's a great way to kind of launch yourself in if you're a dynasty player, redraft player, if you're coming back to fantasy people. Because I see a lot of people starting to come back to fantasy baseball in the last like year or so, maybe like post
Mhm.
pandemic, maybe they're missing it a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah.
So this is a great way to get back into it. But if you're a serious player too, and you're playing in some of these big time money leagues too, we've got all that covered for you as well. It's like I said, it's something that's updated. I do the RPV cheat sheets too for a little extra dough. You can get the updates every time I update something, just like we do for the NFL version too. So you can stay up to date and get those PDF right there for you for your drafts. You can print them out and bring them with you. You can use them on your computer. So we try to be that one single guide for all of your leagues. Doesn't matter if you play points, roto, doesn't matter. We're going to help you win those leagues.
There's a lot of weird leagues out there. You got to cover them all. Joe PSP is 17 on Twitter for all the info. You mentioned Eric Cross. He got his super sharp dude. He has his handprints on our
Mm.
FTN fantasy baseball draft kit as well. I know people are in here for some NFL and one and done. We'll get to it in a second. But since I have Joe, like there's always so many things I want to chat to him about. But we did this a couple weeks ago. You mentioned like high stakes, a lot of money. Govey, if you
Mhm.
could chuck up one of the two boards, we have a board of like the top 12 pitchers on average over the last like 4 weeks. What do you see when you look at this board? Is there a name that jumps up off the page at you as like screaming value, or is there one that maybe, because I feel like the industry is talking about maybe avoiding the top few pitchers this year, living in the maybe in the 12 to 22 range
Yeah.
of average depth in those pitchers, and getting some elite bats off the top. Like, what is your strategy, and what pitcher here jumps off the page? Like, you and I are big Brendan Woodruff guys. I feel like he's right
Oh,
down
sure.
below.
Look, I think there's a ton of those guys in that pitching market, and you started to see them start to pop as you're getting closer and closer to that 12 spot, right? So I'm of one of those minds too, and it's not even just because I don't necessarily value the top pitchers. I mean, I'm a big points league player head to head, our home league that you and I play in for
Yeah.
years together too. Same strategy, right? Same situation. You have to have those elite starters, but at the same time, it's hard to find offense. You got to make sure you're locking those offensive players. I've done a couple mock drafts on our software at Fantasy Pros, which is open now on the Draft Wizard, where you can kind of like mix and match. You can do a bunch of picks and then kind of revert back and then do some others and see how your team goes out, which is really a great value way of looking at things and trying to get your strategy. And every time I start off in the first couple rounds with hitting, I like my team a lot more than I do because I'm finding value in that pitching wheel. When you get to the Rodons, when you get to the Shane Biebers, even guys like Alek Manoah, Kevin Gossman, Yu Darvish, Fried, Christian Javier, I think is going to take a huge step forward this year too. Is one of my favorite guys. Like you can find guys who are going to pitch like aces. And with the way we see, guys who don't get to 200 innings anymore, with the way you see pitching kind of being devalued across the board at Major League Baseball, I think it's better to have a staff of really good pitchers than necessarily look for that elite guy who's going to cost you some of those elite bats. That's just the way I see the board this year. It's not a knock on those elite guys, but how much difference is there between the season that somebody in that top 5 is going to have and potentially a guy like Manoah could have, or a guy, even you see Spencer Strider, going somewhere around like the 6th spot he's on our rankings over FantasyPros.
A little rich.
I mean, there's also huge risk in guys like DeGrom, guys like Shane McClanahan. I think there's huge injury risk there that I just don't want to take that on. There's always risk with every sport, but there's more risk with pitchers, and there's more risk with certain pitchers that we know every time we see them get hurt. I mean, Jacob deGrom's been that guy for every year now, and the fact that he still goes as high as he does, I get it. I understand the upside, but there's just too much downside at the same time for me.
You could start a draft with like at the end of the first with a DeGrom and Trout. I mean, geez, you could win that chip, or you could be done in the first month or so. I mean, there's certainly a lot of risk with those two guys. You mentioned Christian Javier, and I love it. He's a huge target of mine as well. I had him in a lot of leagues. I think I have him in your dynasty format.
Well, if you do, I had him last year, and I wanted to keep him for the buck. But you know me, I went bigger, went home last year.
Okay,
all those old fart expensive starting pitchers, and I got to the finals and I lost because stupid Verlander and Scherzer and all those guys didn't make it to the finish line. Very frustrating.
Very frustrating. Yeah. And now the old boys are teammates again.
I know.
So, Govier, could we bring up the top 12 and we'll wrap up for baseball in this? Because this is very interesting. I don't remember a time where there was just, you could make a case for 5 or 6 guys to be the first overall pick. Like, honestly, I really don't remember. Because Trout obviously for a few years was 1-1-1, and then last year there was some Soto talk, and even Ramirez was kind of in the conversation. Ronald Acuna Jr. Over at NFBC, I got it since the last 4 weeks here. There is a min pick of 1 for Trea Turner, Jose Ramirez, Ronald Acuna Jr., Aaron Judge, Julio Rodriguez, and Shohei Ohtani, who you see on that board at number 8. If you had first pick, who would you take?
Well, if I had first pick in a league where Shohei Ohtani is a pitcher and a hitter, because he is in real life, it's Ohtani because you're getting 2 players for 1. So in the daily transaction leagues of any kind, or a league that values him as those 2 players, then he is by far the guy. Now he comes with risk because if you have an arm injury, it takes him away from everything. So you're losing 2 players, which trying to fill the 2 spots is very difficult. So obviously there's some risk reward there. But to me, I still like the guys like Acuna and Julio at the top, and I'll tell you why. As great as Trea Turner is, and he's a good player, and he's going to be going into a more home run friendly environment, and there's no doubt about that. I think for the first half of the year, they're going to really miss Bryce Harper in that lineup, the lineup protection he provides. But outfield is rough. I mean, after you get past the first 15 outfielders, it's kind of just landmine central, in my opinion. And the depth is just not there. Now, there's a chance that over time, you're going to have guys emerge. The Corbin Carrolls of the world hopefully emerge, and you're going to get bounce back seasons from guys like Luis Robert. You're going to get, some guys like that who are going to start to, I think, show themselves. Maybe you get like a better season from a Chris Bryant who qualifies in the outfield. Brian Reynolds, first half, second half, drastically different player. But really, once you get past 15, 16, you're asking a lot of some of these guys who either have lack of performance track record, injury history, guys are still waiting, on to pop. It's just so many questions. So I like getting the early outfielder personally. I think Julio is just off the charts. I think Julio could be a 40-40 guy. He's just unbelievable. I think Acuna is the safer one, potentially. I do think the power will bounce back. Everybody thought, he's coming off the knee injury. He won't steal bases, but the power will be there. And it was the opposite. So it goes to show you what the community knows. But I think what you do is you look back and you say, hey, I feel, good about what he did last year. The knee's healthy. And now more time removed from the surgery, he'll be better off. But I think those are the 2 guys, specifically Acuna and Julio, that I would go back and forth between. Judge, look, ask him to hit 60 home runs again. That's a lot. And Trea Turner, great player. I know he gives you everything you like there, but to me, I think even the 3 outfielder league, the outfielders to me a little bit more appealing.
I couldn't agree more. I'm a big Julio guy. He's probably my one, and then I would go Ronald Acuna after. It's funny. The Atlanta staff told him like let's ease you back in. Don't be stealing all these bags. And I think he stole 2 in like the first game back. And he's just like,
Yeah,
it's in his nature. He can't help it. Like, what do you mean? You're gonna tell me not to steal bags? I'm stealing bags. One more thing on the way out. It's like a outside of fantasy. Shohei Ohtani. What team does he play for next year? Is it your Mets? Might be.
You know me. I'm the biggest self-loathing Met fan that there is. But Uncle Steve has given me, hope. He is going to outspend everybody else. And I think, look, no offense, I know it's your Angels. I know this is kind of a personal thing for you.
You can't bother me.
But I think the Angels are at best the 4th team in that division right now. I think what Texas did is really eye-opening. The pitching they brought in the last year or two. If John Gray pitches well and Evaldi pitches well and DeGrom can make 25 starts, I'm not asking for a lot here. That could be a very competitive team. Josh Young coming back for that team. If you are the Angels, you need so much help trading Ohtani for all the prospects you can get. If you can get an Alvarez for the Mets and a Beatty, like if you can get 2 premium prospects and then some bodies, that goes a long way to remaking that team. And I feel like the Angels will be better served in the long term doing that deal. And then the Mets are okay making that move because it fills their 2 biggest holes. Another starter in the rotation. And on top of that, another left-handed power bat, which they really don't have in that lineup. So to me, it makes perfect sense. Ohtani in New York, Madison Avenue will sell itself. He will be appointment viewing. And look, Scherzer and Verlander, we talked about it, the old farts there. They're not long anymore. They're getting to 40. So you have to have somebody who's going to take you through those next couple years. So to me, it would make a lot of sense that it is the New York Mets. I'm sure the Yankees will be in that conversation. But at the end of the day, the worst thing for the rest of the league is that the Mets did not waste money on Carlos Correa. Instead, they've pocketed that, and they're going to spend it on probably Shohei Ohtani next year.
It was an amazing article from Adrian Gonzalez talking about potentially Shohei getting $500 million next year. There were multiple MLB executives that referenced that in the article. Like it's most likely going to happen, whether it's from the Mets, from the Dodgers, or the Yankees. And I would agree. I'd say it's probably in the best interest. Although all the money that they do bring in from Ohtani, of course, with endorsements and everything, with Ohtani, and you can see the spike in attendance when they have Ohtani days, and they have tons of Ohtani days. And by the way, they have no Ohtani days, like bobblehead special giveaways in the second half of the season. So
that's what makes him a really tough wager this year on the MVP market, because if he does get dealt to the National League, that could really change things dramatically. So this is the first year where I'm not going to have money on him to start the year. I'm going to have to wait and watch a little bit.
And if he's not signed by like the deadline, if you're the Angels, you should trade this guy, right? You should get what you can for some prospects. I agree. You mentioned Carlos Correa. I saw a great Photoshop of the MLB The Show game.
Yeah,
did you
I saw
see
that
it?
too. Yeah, I did.
Correa with the Giants and the Twins, and then your Mets in there as well. Fantastic.